If you haven't seen the video I did yesterday about some points I had about living as a white minority, go and watch that first before you watch this, because today I kind of wanted to talk about growing up as a white minority in the public education system. And it's a very interesting and very eye-opening experience, especially for young people. So the schools that I went to were never majority white, ever. I mean, it was maybe close to 50-50 at some points, but most of the time it was majority non-white. And in particular, the high school I went to, this is between the ages of 13 and 18, somewhere between there, 14, 18. There were only like 5 white kids in the entire school of like 2,000 or 3,000. There was only 5. That's a pretty damn small minority. That's almost, statistically unimportant. And so let's talk about what you have to look forward to as a white minority growing up in the public education system. First and foremost, you're going to have thick skin. Being easily offended is a sign of weakness, and you will get taken advantage of. You will be walked all over. You're going to have jackboots on your neck all the time if you show any sign of weakness, because you will be racially abused all the time. Things like, just in general, things like fuck whitey and things like that. Oh, he's white, he don't understand that. Or to the more extreme things like, I hope there's no future for white kids. Or like, I hope you don't marry a white woman and have all these white kids. And that's pretty, there's a lot of hatred behind that. It's not just some offhand thing like, oh, black people like watermelon. No, it's not just a stereotype. There is some real hatred behind these people who don't like white Europeans. There is a lot of hatred. And some people just have never had to deal with that. They've never been confronted with someone who hates you to the very core of your being, which is your genetics, for lack of a better word. It's just they hate your genetics. They don't want you to produce any more of you. They hate your group as a whole. They would gladly, aggress against you for any reason. They would gladly wipe out your entire civilization if it meant more power for their group. And this is the reality you're going to have to face when you become a white minority in a couple decades. People of America and people of the rest of the world in Europe, when you get replaced, as I pointed out in one of my other videos, you are being replaced, and this is the future you're going to have to deal with. So get ready for it. Constant targeted racial abuse. It doesn't bother me, of course, because this is just my whole life experience. I just got used to it after a while, and then I started flinging shit back at them. It doesn't bother me at all. But I know there are some sensitive white folks out there who don't like being called names, and you're gonna have to fucking deal with being racially targeted and abused for the rest of your life, and your children are going to have to deal with it too. As I pointed out, this is not a future I want for my children. And so I don't want them to be racially abused and beat on and being used as a target dummy for the rest of their lives, especially not in the fucking public education system where you're trying to learn. And that's one thing. In the classes I took that were normal, the so-called normal classes where it was just like a regular mix of your average ordinary student, of course, still a white minority in those classes, we never learned anything. It was always constant disruptions. It was always people shouting and being loud and not letting the teacher speak. And I mean, there were even some kids that were so ghetto, so trashy, they would get up and they would try and fight the teacher sometimes over a stupid little disagreement like, hey, can you put your phone away? That kind of thing. And it's like they would walk up and spit in the teacher's face and try and fight him. And the campus police, yes, we had campus police in high school, would have to come and escort the student out. And so people were fucking rowdy. And even the rich kids that I knew were real fucking rowdy. Like even sometimes worse than the kids who came from the ghetto. Like they were real fucking trashy, trying to talk all this shit and this, that, and the other. It was a reality. And it didn't really matter if they were black or Hispanic. They were all equally pretty rowdy. And this led to a lot of school day, schoolyard fights constantly, people acting dumb. You'd be sitting trying to eat lunch in the cafeteria and you'd hear fight, fight, fight in the background, and you turn around and there'd be a group of people huddled around 2 guys who were just pummeling each other into the concrete. And it's like, you just turn back around, finish your lunch, and leave, try and stay away from that shit. So that's my message for anyone who's listening. Here's some advice. If you're a white minority in the public education system, just keep your head down, keep to yourself, and stay the fuck away from the dumb shit that happens. Okay, if you see a fight break out, just leave. You don't want to be a part of that shit, because it's more than likely that you're either going to get caught up in some bullshit or you're going to get targeted because you're a certain race. That's just the reality of the situation. Keep your head down. be strong if someone tries to assault you, but just stay away from all that bullshit. Just get your work done, get out, get a good education, and then move the fuck out of that hood. Okay? That's my advice. Something else that some of my more affluent friends never had to deal with because they've never lived as a white minority is the fact that there are a lot of gangbangers in the schools that I went to. Lots, tons. I mean, there's just graffiti everywhere. The bathrooms are just covered in gang signs and shit like that. And people are always bringing some gang shit to school. You know, they're either selling drugs out of their lunchbox or they've got a pistol in their backpack. Like, there's this one guy I knew, certainly not friends with him. He was a failure, you know, basically had to repeat the 10th grade, you know, it was fucking stupid. And we'd be hanging out in the front yard, you know, after school ends, waiting to get picked up, and he'd walk around talking all this shit, and he'd just pull out a pistol that he had in his backpack the whole day, you know, just tall, lanky, stupid black guy with a fucking pistol in his backpack, waving it around, and it's like, I'm not going to be a part of that. Get up, walk as far away as possible from that stupidity, as so you don't get, not only so you don't get shot, but so you don't just get in trouble, you know, because shit escalates real quickly in schools like this, where there's very little parenting that ever goes on, because, come on, let's be real, there's a lot of single motherhood and single fatherhood in the minority communities of America, and it really shows in the schools, because it's just like no parenting has ever been done to these kids. They're so crazy and out of touch and just rowdy as hell. It's not a good environment to learn in. You know, the normal classes I took, fucking atrocious. The only times I ever learned anything was in my advanced placement courses. That was it. And even that was a little bit rowdy every now and again. You know, when people would sign up, join, and then they would flop out of it because they weren't smart enough to keep up with it, you know. And that's another thing. There was a lot of pregnancy in that school. Like, women just left, right, and center getting pregnant because, you know, nobody has a fucking parent to tell them to stop screwing around when they're a teenager. So there were single mothers and baby mama drama, and just this one time when I was a senior in high school, I had to take a class that was an elective, and it was filled with sort of you know, younger kids, sophomore, and we had a freshman, and she was 14 years old, little Hispanic girl, 14 years old, and pregnant at the start of the school year. And that kind of thing is just like, that is not a part of civilized society. This is not something that I want to be a part of. And it was common. I mean, this kind of thing doesn't surprise me anymore, and it shouldn't surprise you if you've lived in this type of society. And it's so bizarre when I look back on it nowadays. And here's another little story that I wanted to share about being a white minority in the public education system, is that people tried to steal from everybody all the time. You know, it wasn't just white kids, but in particular, I think there were a lot of times where I was targeted early on because they thought I was naive. And so they would try and, you know, like pickpocket me and take my backpack and like take the phone I had at the time out of my hands and like run away with it. And I didn't stand up for that shit. But I saw plenty of people who were naive, thinking that they weren't going to get some shit started with them and just be walked all over. Like this one kid, you know, he was a poor white kid who hadn't really been raised in this type of environment, and they took advantage of him so badly the whole like 2 years that he was there before he finally just said fuck it and left. His parents pull him out of school. Like, they took his phone, they took his wallet, he would be sitting there, someone would sit behind him, and like throughout the whole class they would just slap him in the back of the head, and it was all because he was white. It wasn't because of any other reason. It was just because he was white. And so the black kids would sit behind him, and they would laugh and call him names, and they would slap him in the back of the head. You know, he'd walk into class and he'd get you know, a punch in the shoulder, and it's targeted racial abuse, you know, and it's something that he just couldn't deal with. You know, maybe he wasn't prepared, he wasn't strong enough. You know, people tried to start that shit with me because, you know, they thought, oh, it's just a white guy, he's stupid, he's an uppity liberal, he doesn't know what it's like down here, let's fuck with him. And I quickly showed them that, you know, it just ain't happening with me. You know, I'm not going to take that shit. But if you're not ready, if you're not prepared for this new reality, you know, you're going to need a wake-up call. You're going to get racially abused. So really, in the future, and this is what I'm trying to avoid, is the continual replacement of whites and Europeans across the world. It's going to continually come to a point where we are targeted for racial abuse, because you have to realize these groups, these non-whites, have high in-group preference. They will literally kill you if it advances their group in any way, shape, or form. This is just reality, and it's only going to get worse as time goes on. So maybe take that in as some food for thought. Maybe, start thinking about that type of thing. Is this the future you want for your kids? Is this the type of thing that you want to go through? Is it? Honestly, ask yourself, is this the future that you want for your family? Is it? Really, really think about it, because the time to make these decisions is now. The time to take action is now. Prevent a future where you are racially abused by non-whites. It is going to happen. It is already happening. It happened to people like me, and it's only going to get worse. Well, this video is kind of dragging on. That's all I really had to say about the public education system. Like I said, I could maybe in the future, if possible, I'll do a live stream and talk about all this shit more in detail. Just kind of hang out and chill. But take that as you will. If you want to see more, leave me a like, interact with me, hit me up on Twitter, and thanks for listening.